Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. We are once again in the car, which means we have seen a brand new film and we are about to give you a review. And by we, I do not mean myself and my normal counterpart DJ. What I mean is we have brought back on camera, and hopefully we don't regret doing so, but we have brought back onto the show the ever popular, ever famous, unlimited popcorn bucket. Say hi, popcorn bucket. Okay. Just because you're here doesn't mean you gotta talk my ear off. Dang! Oh. Anyway, so the film that we saw today, and by we, I mean myself and all the voices in my head, because he's not real. The movie that I saw in theaters today was none other than the new drama film. I can't really classify it as a comedy. It has some comedic elements to it, but it's mainly a drama film. The Holdovers. The Holdovers, if you guys are not aware, is the new film starring Paul Giamatti. And a basic synopsis is that in Barton, it's like a private high school, Barton, when the holiday season comes around, there's a 2-week break, and most people leave the campus. Those who are not picked up by their families or have something going on usually end up having to stay, and they're called the Holdovers. So the film takes place over the course of the roughly 2 weeks of this holiday vacation, and Paul Giamatti and a trouble student essentially spend the entire 2 weeks together. A story happens, as Barbie's IMDb said for a long time. A story happens, and eventually that story reaches a conclusion. Yes. I just don't want to get into like a bunch of spoilers, but that's kind of like the basis of it. It's set in 1970, like the winter of 1970 and the new year of 1971. So it's kind of a fun piece because it's shot kind of like those films at the time. It's kind of a homage to those kind of films. I will say that I was pleasantly surprised. The majority of the film is not actually in the trailers. There's a lot of things that aren't expressly stated in the trailers. There's a lot of interesting story bits and things like that that are happening. So, thumbs up to that. Now, it's hard for me to really give this like a straightforward number review. I've been trying to think about where I would put it. And so I guess out of a 1 to 10, I give it 2 scores. Just because DJ isn't here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to give it 2 scores for the kind of film that it is. The way that it is shot, the technicalities of it, and the fact that I know for a fact I'm not necessarily the target audience for this kind of film, just because I'm not usually a big fan of dramas. I'm not a huge fan of period pieces. And to put it bluntly, even though, like, yes, I'm here relatively early, my entire theater's median age was probably about 76. So, technicality-wise, it's probably about a 7.5 or an 8. It's really well done. There's a lot of things in it that are pretty good. Personally, like an audience score, I would give it like a 6 out of 10, because I've had more fun in certain films, but I don't really have any like complaints about the movie necessarily. It's just a thing of it's not really my type of movie. So median, put the 2 scores together, it's probably about a 7 out of 10. But that's not necessarily saying it's a bad thing. This film is very slow burning. It has a lot of emotion to it. It has overall, it's a relatively depressing film. Just to be blunt, it's a pretty depressing film. But it is really well put together. It is really well shot. So there's not really any notes that I can take that are like negative towards it, other than it's pretty slow. It kind of just moves at its own pace, and that pace is not quick, it's not fast. And overall, the story is a relatively depressing one. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm just going to open it up to spoilers. Yes, I was going to say spoilers again. Good job. Yes, this film is shot really well. It feels like a film that's meant to be in the 1970s. That's actually a really cool aspect. It has like opening credits that feel like a 1970s film, and it ends with credits in a way that's indicative of a 1970s film. That being said, the 1970s, in my opinion, are not the peak of cinematography. So it's a fun like nostalgia thing, but that's about it. The story follows a student who goes through this holdover period with a teacher that he doesn't like, but he kind of at the same time respects. So he's doing well in school. It's kind of a misconception. So he's doing well in school, but he is stuck with probably his least favorite teacher and a bully, like a sociopathic, like unempathetic bully, a random jock who literally has no character, a little Mormon kid, and a kid whose parents are in Korea at the time. So that's only like probably about 15-20 minutes of the film, though, because it establishes that he's there, and these are all the holdovers, and this is the plan. But what ends up happening is the jock stand-in, the jock cardboard cutout guy, his dad eventually caves and comes back to get him 2 days before Christmas so that they can go skiing. So the teacher takes, into account that, this guy's parents are extremely rich. He literally flies in on a helicopter and invites all of the holdovers to go skiing with him because he can afford it. It's no problem. So the teacher goes and he tries to call all of the parents in order to get the parents' permission to let them go skiing instead of staying at the school. And all of them approve and answer the phone except for our main character. Oh shoot, what is his name? This is awful because he's one of the 3 characters that are in the entire film, and they say his name a lot, and I keep doing this. Our main character, though, our main young character, his mom just got remarried relatively recently to a really rich man. And when she got remarried, the film begins because he's packing his bags. He actually wasn't supposed to be a holdover. He was supposed to be picked up by his mom, go to Boston, and then go to a beach or something like that for Christmas. But at the beginning of the film, he gets a phone call that his mom essentially goes, Stanley, my new husband, and I decided we haven't had a lot of time together. We've only been married since January, and as a result, we haven't had a lot of time to ourselves. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go on a honeymoon over Christmas break. So we cannot pick you up. So you are going to have to stay at Barton, and we may pick you up for spring break, or for sure we'll probably see you in the summer. That's where he's left. So he's actually not supposed to be there to begin with. He's already kind of angry about that. Anyway, so the rich kids' parents come and take all the other kids away, but the teacher is unable to get a hold of the mom at all. she is not answering her phone. The stepfather is not answering his phone. The hotel they're staying at, they are not accepting calls for the mom and the stepdad. So he's literally left there. I'd say shenanigans ensue, but not really. It's just kind of a lot of the film, like I said, it has a pace, but it's a very slow pace. There's bits of humor, there's a couple of things that are relatively funny, and there's a couple of themes that carry out throughout the entire film. There's a sense of doom and gloom because Vietnam is happening, and one of the main characters, the cook, her son, who had gone to Barton because she worked at Barton as the kitchen manager, could not afford to go to college, and as a result was drafted, and he couldn't get an exemption for being a college student. And because he couldn't get that exemption, he ended up in Vietnam, where he lost his life. And our main character is struggling to stay at this school because he's been kicked out of 3 different schools. He has behavioral issues because of his relationship with his mom and stuff with his dad. He says throughout most of the film that his dad's dead. And so he doesn't get along with his stepfather. He has some behavioral issues. He doesn't feel like he's really wanted. And this is the 3rd school that he's been to. He's been kicked out of 2 other private schools. So he knows that if something happens, if he fails out of this school, has some major behavioral issue at this school, or some other horrible circumstance happens, he's actually going to be sent to military school. And if he's sent to military school, he's guaranteed to graduate because he's a junior. So he's going to graduate and then get sent off to Vietnam, more than likely. So there's this sense of doom and gloom because it's pretty clear that going to the military academy isn't just like a punishment, it's more than likely for him a death sentence. Paul Giamatti's character is a relatively bitter old man. He doesn't seem to get along with a lot of people, and the 2 characters actually have a lot in common. Through the course of the film, it's pretty clear that, like Paul Giamatti's character is actually named Paul. That's part of the reason I remember it. Angus. His name is Angus. So Paul and Angus actually have a lot in common. They're both relatively smart. They do well in the same subjects and stuff like that. They both go to Barton, and they don't feel like they really belong in Barton. The mom married a really rich man, and the rich man has sent him off to this school to get rid of him, essentially. He's not wanted. He doesn't feel wanted. He doesn't feel cared for. Paul Giamatti's character ran away from home at 15 because he got a scholarship to Barton. Barton's like his safe haven. It's where he's always gone back to. That's why he still works there. They both have depression. They both have issues mentally with dealing with their life circumstance and things like that. Paul Giamatti's character is dealing with kind of like an existential crisis of sorts, that he feels the world as he knows it is ending. It's deteriorating. Things are awful and horrible. And that's kind of where his depression kind of comes in. He's very lonely. He's an older man who's repulsive. He's hated by the teachers, and he's hated by the students. Angus is unwanted by his mom and stepdad. Unwanted. It's very clear that he's not wanted. He's been sent away. Though he's smart, people at the school don't like him. The people that he deals with the most at the school hate him. They immediately blame him for everything. And so he feels like a black sheep. He feels like an outcast. And even though he does well in school, he always feels like he's on the edge of a cliff. Probably the best parts of the film come when they decide to take an excursion out to Boston, which sadly is most of the way through the film. They take an excursion to Boston to go to the museums and things like that as a field trip. But it turns out Angus has done it to actually try to see his father. It turns out his father is not dead. His father actually had a mental breakdown and has suffered from schizophrenia, paranoia, and a wide slew of things. Like, he literally just, one day his mind broke, he became paranoid, he became hard to deal with, he became angry, and then finally he became violent. So he's been put into this facility. And Angus wanted to go to Boston so that he could see his dad. Paul's character, Paul, lets him go and see him. And they kind of have this moment where Angus realizes that even though his dad kind of is the only parent who does care about him, he is so broken and gone mentally that it's impossible to actually deal with him. The female lead, the kitchen cook manager, the kitchen manager, she's dealing with grief and loss. Her husband died early on when they were both very young, due to like a pier accident, and now she's grieving the loss of her son, who wasn't even 20. And her son, like I said, couldn't go to college because she couldn't afford to send him to college. So she's dealing with that loss the entire time. She goes and she visits her sister, and her sister's having a baby, which is bringing things out more. Yeah, it's one of those films where it's depressing, and there's a lot of things in it that you feel for. Like, it's a decent narrative, but it really feels more like a drama or something that you read for school. It actually feels like a book schools like to have you read more than an actual film. It's not a comedy, even though the trailer really shows like some of the comedic moments. There's not that many comedic moments in this film. It's not rip-roaring hilarious. It's not super narrative driven. It's very much a character piece. And overall, in my opinion, it's a pretty boring film. It's really well shot. It's got good moments and stuff in it, don't get me wrong, but overall, it's just something to watch. This seems to be like something that would come on TV at your grandparents' house, and your grandparents are really into it because they like the story-driven narrative, and they're like, I remember when I was in high school in the 1950s, it was a lot like Barton. Oh. That's about the tone and everything about this film. I've gone on long enough. Do I recommend this movie? Not necessarily. Like, it doesn't really benefit from the theater experience. If you really like character-driven dramas and kind of more like hard-hitting stories, like character stories, not like overall stories, character stories, this one could be relatively enjoyable. It's not really even worth renting on streaming. Like, if it comes on Prime for free, if you like character-driven dramas, you will like this film. Otherwise, not really necessarily a recommend. I didn't feel angry about it though, which is why it's above a 5. Like, I actually have feelings towards it, and it's a relatively good film. I don't feel like I wasted my time. It's just not really my thing. How about you, Popcorn Bucket? Cool. Anyway, like I said, I think I've wasted you guys' time long enough. That is our review of The Holdovers. If you like our reviews, we do them every week. We try to pick a new film every single week. Anyway, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications. If you like cinema and entertainment shows and stuff like that, we also do stuff on Wednesdays where we drop rewrites of bad movies. We revisit and rewatch old classic films. And then we also talk about a variety of different entertainment topics in a podcast form. So if that's kind of your thing, if that's something that you're into, you'd be into our channel. If you're into this video, leave us a like. Let us know in the comments what you thought, if you're going to see this film, or what you think about character-driven dramas in general. Otherwise, I will at least see you guys. Well, I'm not being negative. I just know for a fact that if DJ's here, people would rather hear him talk than read your nasty comments. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.